This is where we left off on Friday, on my Friday class. Um, we went through the generalized life cycle of plants. Now, the bryophytes, non-vascular plants, for the most part have a dominant gametophyte life cycle, where the main thing that you see when you see one of these, like a moss or something, is the gametophyte stage. That's a haploid structure. Then, for vascular plants, for the most part, you have a sporophyte-dominated life cycle. That's 2N. So here we go. We'll start, let's see, right there. We have these spores that are made in the mature sporangium, which are underneath, let's say, we've got a fern, and they produce 1N spores, in other words, haploid spores. And then those undergo mitosis, so there's a lot of them. And then you eventually get the beginnings, the spores essentially germinate, and you've got a gametophyte. These are 1N, that means they're haploid, okay? And they grow into this structure. Now, like I said, if it's non-vascular plants, then this will be the thing that you normally see in nature, okay? So we've got this generalized gametophyte right here, and we've got both male and female structures, the antheridium and the archegonium, okay? And the antheridium produce sperm right here, and the archegonium produce the egg, okay? And then once those are released, the antheridium have to get to the archegonium for fertilization to take place. And here we have fertilization. So now we've restored a diploid state. We've got a zygote. And the beginnings of an embryo through mitosis. And then finally it produces the sporophyte. So usually what you see is at the base of a sporophyte-dominated life cycle, at the base you see a gametophyte underneath. It's usually very small, and then coming from that is the sporophyte. Okay, and that sporophyte eventually matures. In this case, we're showing a fern, and that's the mature sporophyte, the adult sporophyte. It's 2N, right? And then underneath it, it's got these cells that are going to make spores, and they're called sporangium. And the spores, we're finally back to the start of our life cycle, and the spores are again 1N. In other words, a haploid. Okay? This is like on a human, we're sporophytes, essentially. We have sex cells, they produce but we don't produce spores at this stage, we actually produce gametes. And we don't actually go have a sporangium, we have a gametophyte, right? That's what we do right off the bat. Okay, so you could, here we could draw a generalized life cycle. We'll start with the sporophyte. Okay, so here's a sporophyte. Okay, and hold on a second. Come on. Okay, and that's 2n. Okay, and they go. This is you start with the small sporophyte. You go under mitosis. Then there's a part, these sex cells that's called a sporangium, and it's underneath. It's a very small structure, but I'll make it bigger. And here is where spores I'll say spores are produced. Okay. So let's see. This is sporophyte. It's 2n. And then it goes both mitosis and then meiosis. And that's actually this part. Okay. And then finally, they're released, the spores, and then they undergo mitosis, and then finally they grow into a gametophyte with male and female parts. The male parts are antheridium and antheridium, and the other ones are archegonium, and that's the female parts, and these are all 1n, by the way. And they produce gametes. And then they produce, so here's the antheridium, here's the archegonium, this right, oh come on. Okay, and they produce gametes. So here's female haploid gametes, and here's male haploid gametes, and then finally we have fertilization, and we have a gametophyte that gives rise to a sporophyte. Okay, so here we are in our land plant thing, and most land plants, so alternation of generations is right here, right? That means going from haploid to diploid. These guys right here let's see, mosses, hornworts, oh there, yeah, and hornworts have a gametophyte dominated life cycle. Okay, and then we have the sporophyte dominated life cycle down here. Okay, and that includes all of these. Okay, that means the 2N. So when you actually see, let's say, ferns and allies, you're seeing primarily the sporophyte part. So right here, right, and the tree and a flower, all that. Okay. Lycophyte, you're actually seeing both. Underneath is a gametophyte from which the sporophyte exits. And then heterospory means different kinds of spores or different sizes. And so in this case, we have pollen and eggs. Pollen are smaller, eggs are larger. In other words, the spores, the heterospory means that there's different size spores for male and female. Females are larger, and males are smaller. So I was talking about this this transition at this point. Remember, these are gametophyte dominated right here. Okay, and there was this transition then to the sporophyte dominated, starting with the lycophytes and on. So 1N and 2N. Okay, so here's the two different life cycles. For mosses, right here, it's a sporophyte, a gametophyte dominated life cycle. The sporophytes are small, up on top here, right? Okay. And then the same thing with a horsetail, even though it's a vascular plant. The sporophyte is this. The gametophyte is this. Okay. So you can see which is kind of the dominant. Now, for ferns, the gametophyte is a very small structure. Okay, you can see it, but usually out of this grows the fern, the sporophyte part. Here's the sporophyte part. Okay, and it's where the spores are going to be made underneath. Now, there's advantage. Diploid cells can actually respond to varying environmental conditions better than haploid cells. Primarily, remember, diploid, you have two chromosomes, homologous chromosomes, one from mom, one from dad. Each probably have different alleles at a lot of different sites, different versions of genes, and so there's more variation there on which to draw on. And ferns can be, regular kind of up to, let's say, less than a meter, obviously, or tree ferns like this. Okay, so in review, human is 2N. Oh, God damn it. Human is 2N, right? Okay. Oh, this has a, oh, what a mess. Okay, 2N. It comes from a 2N zygote as well, following fertilization. So these combine. And form the zygote. Humans, the zygote then goes by mitosis. And then, of course, we're making sex cells. And so humans grow, and then they finally mature, and they have germline cells, and they're either male or female. And then for plants, the sporophyte is 2N, diploid. The gametes are 1N, okay, 2N. Here's the gametophyte that produces spores. And in some cases, you don't have male and female. And gametophytes are haploid or 1N. And meiosis, you have fertilization, so you've got a sporophyte. They don't even do it in the right. If they had done that. Okay. So which of the following statements is true? Laying on moss or pine needles, you are mainly supported by the haploid organisms of their or their parts. Well, moss is true. Pine needles are false. Laying on moss or pine needles, you're mainly supported by the diploid organism. Again, moss is false. Pine needles are true. Flower petals on a fancy dinner salad are haploid. False. The moss you lie on is mainly haploid, whereas the pine needles are diploid. So I guess that's the one they were looking for, as far as. Okay, so here we are, vascular plants. Heterospory, different size gametes. So most non-vascular plants and most seedless vascular plants are homosporous. That means they have the same size spores. And then they have a bisexual gametophyte that then archegonia or antheridia for sperm, archegonia for eggs. Okay? So, here's the sporophyte, of course, an equisetum. Here's the gametophyte down here. Gametophyte sporophyte. And then here's the mature gametophyte. It's one N. It has structures that release eggs. They're called archegonia. The eggs form in the archegonia. And antheridia, the sperm form in the antheridia. They're released, and then when they come into contact, then you have a zygote, and you've restored 2N. So heterospory, production of two distinct types of spore-producing structures, male and female. For seed plants, like gymnosperms, ginkgophytes, angiosperms, so gymnosperms are pines and cedars and things like that. Ginkgo is its own separate group of seed plants, and then our flowering plants, angiosperms. The gametophytes of seed plants are either male or female, but not both. But they can be on the same plant here. So seed plants are heterosporous. That means they make seeds and different size seeds. So microsporangia and make microspores, small spores. The male gametophyte produces sperm, in this case pollen. And then the female produces, let's see, what is it called? Well, they produce eggs, okay? And there's different parts of the structure. There's the stigma and the ovules are the eggs, okay? So, we have where is this? Hold on. Oh, there. Okay. Now, and then as far as the female, they have megasporangia, that means large. Megaspores, large spores, and then a female gametophyte, which the actual gametes are eggs. Okay. Seed plants, the rise of higher plants. These are the ones that dominate the terrestrial landscape. And there's over like 400,000 species. Just tremendous amounts. If you think about animals, there's less, but there are a lot of different species of insects. So on land, plants really adapted and adaptive for diversification, primarily because they've got seeds, and first of all, seeds, you don't need water to survive. You can desiccate. You can wait until water comes in the form of rain or snow, and then you can germinate and produce plants. So synapomorphy for seed plants, gymnosperms, those are pines and cedars and redwoods. And then angiosperms are the flowering plants. They both produce seeds. The synapomorphy for both is heterospory. That means the males produce pollen, very small. The females produce ovules from which the seeds are made. Oh, okay. So here's some different gymnosperms that we still have. Ginkgo. We have conifers, cycads, neophytes. I'm not sure what that is. There's a bunch of different ones, and then there's these angiosperms. It looks like Archifructus is perhaps the kind of basal angiosperm, and maybe I don't know, 150 million years ago. And then you can see various levels or clades of plants, but they all produce flowers. Okay. So these different lineages of gymnosperms, as you can see, they're all at around the same taxonomic level. It's not really well worked out. They're much older than angiosperms. Okay, so we know that conifers and neophytes share a common ancestor. Cycads are sister to that group, and then sister to ginkgo. And then there's angiosperms. They form a monophyletic group. And they have all these various things that they evolve. There used to be a thing that made a distinction between dicots and monocots. Monocots like grass, corn. The leaves are usually parallel venation. And then dicots are not. Most of the other plants, but it turns out that's wrong with recent phylogenetics. Phylogeny is done. So the phylogenetic tree is important. For gymnosperms is not all on the, hold on. The phylogenetic tree for gymnosperm taxa is not on the Quizzer exams. In other words, you don't have to know conifers or cycads. But you do, I imagine, gymnosperms contains 4 of the 5 lineages of seed plants. They have naked seeds. Conifers, pines, spruces, firs, redwoods, then cycads, neophytes, and ginkgo, and then the flowering plants are the angiosperms. So these are all different gymnosperms. So cones that produce microsporangia, that means they're males, produce pollen. Okay? And these are the pollen-producing structures. That's the male part. Cones that produce, and these are the cones mainly that you're most familiar with, are macrosporangia, and they produce eggs or ovules, and from which, when they're fertilized, you get the seeds. So angiosperms have three major synapomorphies. They have a flower, for the reproductive structure. They have a fruit. It can be a naked fruit that contains a seed, or a fruit like something like a blueberry or something that has seeds in it. So that's the fruit. But a fruit is a generalized structure. It doesn't necessarily mean fleshy fruit. And then angiosperms also have another set of a different set of vessel elements they're called vessel elements, whereas gymnosperms only have tracheids. So the great diversity of plants that we are most familiar with are the flowering plants. So here's our angiosperm. And we've got underneath, let's see, so these things are sepals. These are the petals. These are the part that is the male structure, and this is the female structure. Okay? And then inside that female structure, we've got the endosperm, root cap, all this stuff, the shoot apical meristem from which everything grows, and the seed coat, and then the cotyledons. Okay, so the fruit provides protection and nutrients for developing embryo in the seed. However, it's a little misleading. The fleshy fruit is not there for the plant in the sense of providing nutrients. The fleshy fruit is there for animals that come along and eat it. Okay? But these are other kinds of fruits. Let's see here. So we've got legumes, right? The seeds, the pericarp, all that. There's a style that was fertilized, stigma. These are the seed and then the pericarp. The fruit does not split. It's a wing. So in other words, it's still considered a fruit. And then here's, in this case, we've got a pineapple. It's actually a multiple fruit. The individual flowers form fruits around a single stem. The fruits fuse is seen in this pineapple. So they're all individual flowers. Okay. In this case, this is a true berry. The entire pericarp is fleshy with a thin skin. Berries have multiple seeds in one or more ovaries. Okay, so you can see all these different seeds. Right? The outer pericarp, fused carpels. Okay, so that's a true berry. This is a drupe where you have a single seed. The pericarp is the outside. The endocarp is the seed, and then there's a mesocarp. A single seed is enclosed in a hard pit, so the endocarp is the seed inside the pit, and then surrounded by this fleshy part. Some produce nuts, like almonds, which are related, in this case, to peaches. Okay, it's just that almonds, for the most part, are found in much drier environments. And then finally, this is an aggregate fruit. There's actually all kinds of different fruits. So they're derived from many ovaries of a single flower, like strawberries, blackberries. Unlike tomatoes, these ovaries are not fused. They're individual. And there's other kinds of fruits as well. It turns out, just so you know, the first fruits were actually on some gymnosperms, produced the first berry-like fruits. But they came from different parts of the endocarp and pericarp. Like cycads produced a berry. So angiosperms, the flowering plants, they attract pollinators. So flowers, there are a lot of plants that don't produce showy flowers. Grasses, for example. They don't rely on on animals for pollination services. They rely on the wind and gravity. Okay, flowering and grass, by the way, is part of the flowering plants, the angiosperms. But the ones that we're most familiar with are the ones with showy petals and sepals, and that are pollinated by insects, by birds, by bats. There are certain types that are, we'll say, more associated with one type of animal than another. So a lot of hummingbird pollinated plants have long red corollas that they stick their beak and also their long tongue into to get the nectar. Often for bee-pollinated flowers, often bright purple. For other insects, other colors. Usually not long corolla tubes, but some do because they're pollinated, let's say, by butterflies, which have a long proboscis or moths. These carrion flowers smell like rotting flesh and attract flies. They don't actually, the flowers are deceitful. They smell like rotting flesh for where they want, the flies would normally lay their eggs, but they don't produce any nectar. And of course, if they lay their eggs there, nothing happens, okay? There's no nutrients for the larva to feed on. So you can have, there's all kinds of different kinds of pollination, wind, water, many different kinds of animals. And then the same thing goes on with seeds and fruits. Namely, like fleshy fruits attract animals that come and eat them. and then poop them or regurgitate out the seeds. Okay? So, let's see here. So the phylogenetic tree again is not on the exams. You don't have to know water lilies or star ants or conifers for the gymnosperms. Okay? Monocots include wheat, corn, grass. Eudicots or true dicots where they have two cotyledons. Monocots a single cotyledon. So angiosperms, monocots, and dicots. Monocots a single cotyledon. Here. Okay. One cotyledon underneath here, sorry. And then dicots have two cotyledons. Okay. Monocots, for the most part, have parallel veins in the leaves. Okay. Dicots, for the most part, branching veins. Branching. Famous angiosperms and dicots. So wheat is a monocot. Orchids are, so let's see, M. Bamboo is M. Dicots, what is this? These look like, I'm not sure, vanilla. If vanilla is a monocot or a dicot. Let's see here. I think it's a dicot. And what is this? Oh, and here's dried out vanilla. Okay, so these are the fruits. And the vanilla beans dried out. Oh, I was wrong. No. These are all monocot. Orchids aren't monocots. There's no way. Are they? Oh, they are. These are all monocots. God damn it. Sorry. What is it called? Hold on a second. Now, dicots, eudicots, these are a lot of the flowers that we're familiar with. They've got that other kind of vein. Apples part of a genus. They're in the rose family. All of these are in the daisy family. I'm not sure. Oh, this is one of those stinky plants. Okay. One of the plants that we know the most about, that we use in a lot of investigations of development and gene expression and all that is Arabidopsis. So it's a model plant. Okay, so some different, a lot of different drugs are from plants. We've got atropine, codeine. Atropine is from belladonna, the potato family. Codeine, opium. What is it called? Opiums are, oh crap, I forget. Oh, papaver. Foxglove, digitalis, it's a heart medication. Let's see, foxglove are, they're not, oh, they're the same, I think they're the same group as penstemons, showy, morphine, poppy, papaya, papain, quinine tree, steroids, wild yams, Taxol, the Pacific yew. It's used for ovarian cancer. Tuberculin, curarivine, muscle relax, used for surgery. From the rosy periwinkle. So all these kinds of things, these different plants can give us drugs for a lot of different things. Let's see, I want to see something. Okay. Place the following on this tree. Heterospory. Okay, so let's see. Grain plants is two. And land plants oh, sorry, green plants are one. Okay. Land plants are two. Angiosperms are three. And gymnosperms are four. Heterospory is A. Sporophyte dominated. C, and alternation of generations. Place the following on this tree. Heterospory. Let's see. Alternation of generations. A. Hold on a second. Sporophyte dominated life cycle. Okay. Green plants. Gymnosperms. Come on. God damn it. And let's see, land plants. Land plants. Okay, Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. Oh, that's red algae. Um, okay. Mm-hmm. Mm. Mm-hmm.